Okay, well, let's get started. Welcome everyone to the Torus community meeting for February. Today we have some guest speakers who are going to give a presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Judy, who will introduce the whole thing. Thanks, Judy.
Thanks, Erin. I'll do screen share so you can see. So yeah, today's topic is on a pilot that we ran. Sebastian, of course, and his teaching context was primary on this. His vision is driving what we did in order to set up the pilot. And then, the team, Martin and Harley, did a lot of hard work to facilitate that, to design and facilitate that. And so we have a nice little presentation to give you some insights to what we did, what the outcomes were. And also to take a look, we have a little video that take a look at the tool itself and just a very high level, like background description of what the functional components, how things are set up. And what we want to get to is a nice Q&A about, what resonates with you about this and what you're looking for, additional features you would want given, what we tried. And then, of course, go into the OLI future of annotation tools and Torus, where normal pick up from there. So with that, this is the agenda. And if you're not present in this room, we do hope that you still contribute. I think Erin has ways to have people contribute their ideas. We are looking to generate some discussion around this topic. So with that, I will hand it off to Sebastian, who will talk through the experience in the classroom.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks everybody for coming. So the idea of the project started from, as Judy said, my own teaching context. I'm a teaching professor in modern languages. I teach French primarily, and we do have a long-standing OLI course.
Sebastian, can I interrupt just briefly?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's happening for others, but I can't hear you very well. Can others hear you?
Yeah, he's really soft for me.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can crank up the volume. How is that? Better?
Great. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, so in our OLI courses in French, we try to do a lot, of course, of peer-to-peer interaction in all kinds of ways, but of course for oral skills purposes. And so we're trying to see how we can translate this into an online format, which often includes text chat. But so that's what spirited this effort in the first place. But the vision behind this is that, at least in my book, learning is and will always be a team sport. And so I'm trying to engineer ways whereby students can actually collaborate with each other and help each other and create a sense of sort of common engagement and effort with material. And I think that technology can sustain this. So I approached Judy and I told her that the two tools that we needed were an online chat tool and a digital annotation tool. For us, from the sort of the pedagogical imperative is to be able to maximize the amount of time that students are able to interact with each other synchronously through chat tool, or synchronously or asynchronously through the digital annotation tool. From a pedagogical perspective, what's really interesting is that what we had up until that point was that students were sent to be set up their own chats. And so as an instructor, we got formats, we got the chat logs in all kinds of different formats. People would send us text messages that they screenshotted. People would just download a log of some sort and email it to us. Some people would just copy and paste text and send them in an email. And it's very unwieldy for one thing, and it's also for the instructor a bit of a headache. Not quite as much at CMU, because if you have one section of French 1 with 20 students, that's 10 groups, you can probably keep track of this. having being a language program director at other institutions that had 850 students, where every instructor had, say, 120 students, or one of our leading adopters right now, which is PIMA, where I'm sure the language program is probably 500, 800, 1,000 students, I don't know. Having tools like this with an instructor and having instructors receive assignments in 15 different formats is probably not sustainable for those instructors. So having a tool that is native to the OLI allows the instructor to centralize everything in one place, which also actually is convenient for the students. I don't know about you, but same thing with managing language programs. Students really dislike having to leave the architecture of their course to go and fetch a tool somewhere else to do an assignment. So they like actually having everything native. So that was great. And then when I also approached Judy, and with Norman's support, who should be acknowledged here because we actually received a seed grant from the Simon Initiative to spearhead these efforts, I couldn't help but think that surely I was not the only one who was asking for more collaborative tools for their courses. I know it's a must-have in foreign languages, but I can also imagine how this would be useful for somebody in, I don't know, chemistry, history, business, political science, I don't care. Especially as we are ushering ever so incrementally in the era of more collaborative, active learning, project-based type stuff that do require more rather than less collaboration. And so now that we have done this, we actually have a proof of concept of what is possible with these tools. So in the pilot, as Judy was saying, we piloted both of these tools in an intermediate level French course I was teaching last fall. The sequence of activities for the chat tool was as follows. Because we wanted to pilot the tool, we actually piloted it in the classroom. So synchronously, which is pretty understood for a chat tool, but also in the classroom. And Harley was there so that he could monitor and troubleshoot in case anything would go wrong. And so I use this as the students would have a scenario based on a model that is pretty prevalent in foreign language instruction called strategic interaction, where there is a gap and the two interlocutors in the scenario have to resolve that gap, et cetera, et cetera. And so they actually, there are two roles in this scenario, and the students had to prepare these roles at home. Then they came to class and they did it through the chat tool. Then I downloaded the log for everybody. I give them feedback, both on language choices and stylistics and pragmatics and so on and so forth. They worked on this for a couple of days, and we came back the following class session. And they actually performed these interactions viva voce in front of everybody in the room. So that was for the chat tool. For the digital annotation tool, it's a way whereby students can actually read with each other. So again, we used it in class, but at least for me, my primary use case going forward is for students to be able to rely on each other outside of class. So it's giving them we send them home and say, go read, which is a really difficult activity, especially in a foreign language. And so if they can rely on each other for questions, vocabulary, content, I mean, vocabulary, not so much now because they all have, Google Translate and word reference, but interpretation and things like this, it actually makes the reading experience richer, more robust, more powerful. And so that's what we were trying to do. So we give them different kinds of texts when we piloted it to see what they were doing with it for about an hour, and then they actually use the results of these texts to write written responses as homework outside of class. In terms of outcomes, of what I noticed, anecdotally, which is exactly what I was hoping to notice, is that the students in the chat and environment, by the time they came back, produced far more language. So in a conversation that started with, say, maybe 8 turns at speech for each interlocutor, turned into a conversation that had 12, 14 turns at speech. The sentences were longer, they were more accurate, they were more fluent, they were pragmatically more accurate. So and this is in line with some early research that I got involved with in a previous life with some colleagues at Georgia Tech that showed that the skills, the interactional and social skills that students develop in CMC environment, computer mediated communication environment, actually do transfer to face-to-face environment. So that was pretty cool to notice. Same thing in the digital annotation tool, the students were actually relying on each other, engaging with comments, the ones that were a little bit ahead. Their comments got picked up by people who were reading slightly more slowly. But if you eliminate or if you sort of displace the temp variable by having students interact with the text asynchronously, then that, the speed of reading doesn't really matter anymore. And then in terms of the technology itself, how the tools actually work, the pilot yielded, I thought, great success in 2 ways. One is that they were, I think, intrinsically well designed straight out of the gates, meaning that there were a lot of UI or tech literacy that the students brought to this that made the interface look familiar for them. So they were easily able to identify where to put their text, how to send it, how to respond to each other, et cetera, et cetera. So that was great because they didn't spend a ton of time wondering what they were looking at and how to use it. They plunged into the activity straight away. The second thing that I thought was another success is that we got great feedback from those students on functionalities that they thought should be there, and could we make it happen? Things like how to better call for help if the teacher is present, how to be able to interact with specific posts, either through little reactions like we have in Zoom or in emojis and that kind of thing, as well as replying to specific comments or replying to specific turns at speech, which allow the students, by the way, to both have the conversation going itself in the chat tool, for example, as well as metacognitive strategies saying, hey, when you said this, did you mean blah? And then how could we better do this, right? So you have almost like having 2 parallel threads between those 2 interlocutors going on at once, which was, I think, fantastic. Of course, the last thing that I will say about the tools from a technological point of view that was great is that they were both embeddable as Canvas activities. So the students, if you're using their native, they were built to be native to the OLI. So when we use an all OLI course, like my colleague Natalie Amgad is doing this semester down the pike, that could be done. Our students don't have to go anywhere else. But if you're using Canvas, then you can embed these activities and manage groups and so on and so forth through Canvas, which is immensely helpful as an instructor, and also like I said, very desirable for the students. So I think that's me in a nutshell. I'm going to pass the baton to whoever comes next.
Sorry, I probably didn't get to your screen and bullets, but here they are, folks, for watching the video when you were talking through them. Yeah, so next.
Oh, did I forget the research part?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I should talk to this a little bit, because I mostly these tools were primarily aimed at sort of improving the learning environment for students, but me also being a sort of researcher of pedagogy and how to best set up technology mediated learning environments for language learning, it you know, it's nice that they work those tools, but I'm also interested in finding out how students develop. And this is, from a developmental perspective, this is a much more powerful tool than, say, giving exams on a regular basis, because students can ace an exam. But what this allows to do by downloading the logs of both of these tools, the chat tool and the annotation tool, is essentially to compile over time a learner corpus, right? And so we can track the developmental trajectory of students in terms of lexical complexity, pragmatic complexity, accuracy, things that they master one time, not the other. So when they're in free variation versus when they finally master the structure, for example, and they're able to deploy it pretty accurately from one point onward. And so this is great for people who want to do research in addition to teaching.
Great, thanks. And now we'll just take a quick walk through the two tools. It's a really short video that'll just give you some insight to how the tools work. And thank you, Harley, for preparing this video for us. And let me know if you have any problems experiencing it.
Hi, and welcome to this demonstration of the social digital annotation and chat tools. We'll start off with a general overview of both tools, followed by their student-facing features, and then its instructor-facing features. These features were developed to work in both Annotator and Chat, so we will talk about each feature and then how each tool implements them. An annotator learn by doing activity allows for text to be collaboratively commented on by groups of students. Students can simply highlight a portion of text, click the comment button for a text box to appear, and annotate the highlighted text to the right of the text. Each student has their own highlight color and can reply to each other's annotations. The tool should feel familiar to anyone using collaborative commenting tools, such as Google Docs. A chat learned by doing activity integrates the Rocket Chat platform with OI and allows for students to informally talk to each other asynchronously. The platform contains basic chat features, such as threaded replies and emojis. Annotator and Chat share several useful features, including being an embedded OOI learn by doing activity, the ability to use Canvas's LTI to pass through users and groups to OOI, and supporting multiple languages. Once you create the student groups on Canvas, Annotator and Chat will recognize these groups. This student is in Group 1, and the highlight and comment he makes will only be seen by Group 1 members. Notice that Group 2 members see nothing. Similarly, a change in Group 2 will not be seen in Group 1. A similar idea happens in Chat. Assigned groups are filtered into separate chat rooms. Next is the @instructor feature. Using the @instructor trigger phrase will send an email to instructors, allowing students to get an instructor's attention when a collaborative learning activity is done asynchronously. Again, a similar feature is found in Chat. Now let's look at the instructor-facing features. Individuals designated as instructors for the course will have a slightly different view of the activity, where they can see each group on the right side of the activity. They can then join any group by clicking on this button to the side of the group and comment as if they were a group member. A similar view is also in Chat, allowing the instructor to visit all the different groups' chat rooms. Instructors can download a CSV file of student interactions. The file includes the student, a timestamp of what was highlighted, what was the comment, as well as any replies. Chat has the additional option to download an HTML file for easy readability. Currently, both Chat and Annotator has been tested to work with French, Chinese, and Arabic.
Okay. Thanks, Harley, for that tour. And next, let me just see, get to the next slide. There we go. We just wanted to, where am I in this document? Here we are. Okay. Next, we just wanted to give you a little lightweight overview. It's just some transparency into the backend system. Martin, if you're here, did you have a few comments on this? And then we can,
Hey, Judy.
I don't.
yeah, there we go.
Judy, can I ask a question about the system and what it can do, or is this not the right time?
We're gonna have Q&A just after this particular component.
Okay, no worries.
Go ahead, Martin.
I'll talk about it in the 2 slides that I got. Yeah, so this one. We're talking about 2 completely different systems, chat and annotation. Both use a very traditional front and back end system. And in the case of Annotator, we're using something called Rocket Chat to basically create the glue and an integration ability between Rocket Chat and OLI. It's fairly traditional, and it allows us to do, actually, we can do logging, we can do transcript export, those kinds of things. Annotator is a little bit more involved because it requires real-time synchronization and a lot of algorithmic merging. That's why I've got this slide over here where you can really embed an annotator area in an OLI workbook page and learn by doing anywhere you want. Like you see here. And the way it works is every student has its own proxy running in OLI that talks to a backend service. And the backend service does all of this orchestration work to make sure that all these groups stay isolated and that all of the students can talk to each other in almost real time. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the big tech drive here is that all of these students, all of their responses and all of their activities are synchronized and blended in a way so that it seems like you're sort of interacting real time with someone else. And this is sort of the largest part of the entire system because it's fairly complex. But basically, the mechanism is still the same, where there's a middleware service that runs behind the scenes with its own database that mediates the student to student and the instructor to student interaction and visualization in OLI. And I think if I go any more deeper technically, people are going to kick me off.
No, I think that's perfect, Martin. Thanks so much for that explanation. And of course, people can write to us with, or, you know, through Aaron to get more information about anything that we just missed. But first, Michael, I think you have a question, but yeah, so this is kind of where we want a nice Q&A around, you know, what resonates with you about what we just saw, what additional features would you want for your context, and what questions remain for you. So Michael, go ahead with yours.
Okay, so first of all, I think this is really great, and it's a long needed system. So the instructors and students, they need to go page by page to find the annotations, or is there some higher level menu that'll take them to that, to the individual listing annotations and where they are?
So Michael, these are learn by doing activities. So they are situated on pages. And so like you have to go to a particular page to find and to use them.
Yeah, there's no reason. Well, okay, 2 things. One, I think it would be great to have annotations everywhere. I'm not sure why it's limited to learn by doing. If I don't understand as a student, if I don't understand something in the description, I think that's a missed opportunity to yeah.
I'll just chime in there real quick, Michael. Our focus was to give students practice as assignments part of class. So These
Yeah.
are learn by doings. So
Yeah.
we're not suggesting that you need to eliminate. What we're saying is we want a learn by doing embedded activity where we can know that we've given them this practice, and this practice, as opposed to just like, I want to annotate on my page while I'm taking notes. And so these two things aren't mutually exclusive, but we do have a purpose for the learn by doing. And that was the focus of our work is all.
Okay, I would say that's a missed opportunity. I'll leave it at that. And then with the chat, so where I missed how the students are pulling up the chat, is that from any page, or is that, do they need to go somewhere else for that?
It's also a learn by doing activity, so it's situated on a particular page.
So why, I guess I'm missing the subtle difference between the chat and annotations. Why both? Or what does chat do that annotations doesn't do, since they're both living on learn by doing activities?
Well, they're testing different, or they're practicing different skill sets, but Sebastian has rationale for each one. If you wanted to speak to that, Sebastian.
Yeah, I think it's more of a the chat only has a prompt, and then after that, the students basically talk to each other. So the primary function of this is a synchronous sort of dialogue mimicking kind of activity. It's I guess this idea of what's his name calls it fingered speech, right? It's not quite writing, and it's not quite oral, because it's used for, you know, when students don't have access to each other necessarily. The primary use, at least for me, of the digital annotation tool is to be able to expose the students to longer stretches of text and have them annotate asynchronously. So in some ways, it's more persistent, right? They can return to it after the fact, and it's still there. The chat, once they're done, it's that's it. That's the end of the activity. I mean, they return to it to iterate and to improve and so on and so forth, but it's a self-contained sort of, this is it. You know, we did our interaction, our dialogue, our conversation, or whatever it is that we were trying to accomplish pragmatically, and then we move on.
So is the chat universal, tied to all learn by doing exercises, or is it one chat per each exercise?
It's an activity type that we create as a learn by doing type.
So if you wanted your students to talk to each other about a particular document, that would be the better alignment for this, I guess, would be the annotation tool. Right. So they could read synchronously, but they don't have to. You know, so if two students happen to be, and that's the beauty of the whole thing. If two students wanted to, or happen to read at the same time, then the annotation tool and the chat tool would function almost the same way, because they could see each other's comments populate, and that's how we used it in the classroom. Which, by the way, allows us to one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time in French, and now in French and Spanish, and that we piloted for the first time this past semester, was the possibility of having public-facing OLI courses that are not tied to any particular institution, but where the students would be able to harness the power of actually being in a cohort, even though they classify as quote-unquote independent learners, by saying, hey, we're going to have one iteration of this course. It's going to be French 1, or in this case, it was French 3, because now we have a new curriculum for French 3. It's going to be French 3, and we're going to start September 1st. If you want to hop on board, come aboard. And so then you have, say, well, in this case, I think it was 40 students who came from everywhere. And they just happened to, you know, start at the same time. And so then when you have that possibility, then the value added for the customer in this case is that they know that there's 39 other people who are going through the same thing, right? And so then they can leverage each other in a way. And so it would be even inconceivable that two of them would be like, hey, you know, I have a couple of I have an hour. I was going to do French tomorrow at 4. Anybody on board? And then, you know, they can do it. But that's sort of, I guess, looking forward at that. But that's how I envision them differently in my head. Is that one is primarily for you and I now, let's chat, versus you and I over a week, let's unpack this document together.
Okay.
So, so are there things about this that folks see, okay, yeah, that is something in my context, I totally resonate with that, and I'm going to +1 it. Are there things that, are missing from your perspectives that you want to make sure that, hey, from our perspective, we want to know, like, what are people thinking that they need? And of course, there are things that are already planned for Torus, so maybe y'all have that in your background thoughts, but yeah, we're just trying to get that conversation going and understanding. And then of course, any additional questions about what we've shared.
I would say one more thing to dovetail with what Michael was just saying, which is that I could see going forward if native instruments or native tools like this could be built into Torus, that some readers like to annotate their textbooks, right? And so if they had that opportunity, and I know now most commercially available online textbooks actually do this. You can just put a sticker, like almost like a sticky note somewhere, just for yourself. But why not even imagine it for, like, you're reading the introduction of a chapter and you're having questions, you're having comments or whatever, then we could, that would be a possibility. But I think in my case, the reason it, I guess, got morphed into learning by doing is because all of this thing was going to be assigned. Like, you assign the text as prep for classroom discussion, or as as a springboard for students to do something with. And so the learning by doing seemed to sort of make sense with the architecture.
Right, and we can tag it. So for the learning dashboard, et cetera, for your output later. So when we're tagging, oh, we've got this kind of practice, deliberate practice, then that was the place to be able to do that functionally. Michael, I see your hand up.
No.
Not Michael. Michael.
Hi, different Michael.
Michael.
Yeah. Apparently, if your name is not Michael, you're not asking questions. That's it. That's how this works.
So I know that the annotation across the OLI course was not the main functionality intended for this particular tool, but I do want to add my own experience as an OLI instructor. I've had students who had to take screenshots of particular sections of the course content or the activities and then email them to me. And I've had students that I had to walk through being able to do that in the first place. And I think that it would just streamline everything if there was an annotate function on every page of every activity, at the very least, with just the ability to do the @instructor thing and get an email with the course content and the student question. I think that would be a step in the direction of, like what Sebastian was mentioning earlier, that students want to be in one ecosystem and they don't want to have to hop around to different sites or crop screenshots in Microsoft Paint or whatever the kids are using these days. Yeah. We definitely see this, the feature set that we applied in this small pilot to potentially have legs. And I believe Norman, I want to make sure you have enough time to do your spiel, because I think you'll all be pleased with what he's about to present. And do you want to present it, or do you want me to?
Here, I can jump in and present it.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for that. So I feel like I've just been set up very well for this presentation, or this part of the presentation. It is valuable as we have these discussions to distinguish between a specified and structured activity. So I am assigning students the task. I would like you as a group to use chat to together build a presentation about green technology, or I'm assigning you this task of reading and commenting on this specific text. So we can think about that as structured and specified activities versus unstructured general purpose activities. And I think that we're hearing loud and clear that having these capabilities available more generally in an unstructured way is something that could be valuable. So let's talk a little bit about where we're headed with what we're calling collaborative spaces in Torus. So What we refer to as collaborative spaces is talking about a core part of Torus technology, something that's been architected to be really foundational and that's going to support a wide variety of activities. That collaborative spaces can be instantiated as a discussion, as a chat, and as an annotation. We talk about these as collaborative spaces in part because as the Torus team noted when they were thinking about how to architect this, in many ways, these are the same underlying activity. It's simply that these activities show up with slightly different presentations, shown up in a threaded way. I have a discussion, but shown up in real time, I have a chat. The timing is different, so whether I want to engage in these things synchronously or asynchronously, and the expectations for how I engage with them. But under the hood, these can be represented as similar activities. And so these are all being implemented, or will be implemented, I should say, as variations on this core collaborative space technology. Some of the key inputs when we think about what we have to account for in collaborative spaces. So first, inside of Legacy, we actually have some existing legacy activities, particularly the discussion forum activity. And so we need to make sure that we're able to accommodate and hopefully improve upon those existing core activities. But we also need to be cognizant of the kind of current pilot activities and approaches that you just heard about. How can we make sure that wherever we're building is going to support these use cases and improve upon them? In a number of places, our support for collaboration hasn't always engaged well with some of our research community who have been doing deep research into computer-supported collaborative learning. So we want to make sure that we're able to support that effectively. And lastly, we have a new Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation supported courseware project that it turns out has become a real driver for needs and for accelerating progress around collaborative spaces. One of the things that you're seeing here, anybody that's familiar with OLI and its history, particularly my work in OLI, is that we try to find a bunch of different projects and a bunch of different sources of funding, and we braid those together to try to make more rapid progress. We've had a great opportunity to do that here. This Gates-funded project is an equity-centered courseware exemplar that comes out of the Gates Courseware Innovation Challenge, the CIC. CIC was launched with the goal of trying to initially build one. Now it turns out that they're going to be building 2 exemplars of innovative courseware specifically intended to focus on outcome improvement for Black, Latinx, and Indigenous students and students experiencing poverty. So this is really, when they say an equity-centered exemplar, that's the goal of the foundation. Our project has been awarded in collaboration with ASU's Education Through Exploration Center, ETX Center. We're building out a Gen Chem 1 and Gen Chem 2 sequence. And one of the things that's exciting about this is that this is going to be launched as a Torus native course. One of the other projects that the team is hard at work on is migrating course content from the legacy system into Torus. We're making great progress on that. And at some point, we should be giving an update to the larger community. But this new chemistry course is going to be Torus native. We proposed and continue to develop this chemistry course with an eye towards those focused learner populations, and our belief that some of the things that are going to be important first for their success is contextualization of chemistry. Chemistry far too often is taught in a sort of abstract way. We really need to contextualize it in ways that are going to make sense for these learners, for their past experiences, and for their goals. What we've heard over and over again from user research in this space is that community and a sense of belonging are really important to these learners and to their success, and that enabling better communications and better collaboration, both peer-to-peer and student to instructor, is one of the places that courseware has frequently fallen down, and that these students are being really hard pressed by those failures. And so we've really been thinking deeply about what are the kinds of collaboration supports that we want to put into place for this chemistry exemplar. Our vision has been that social annotation becomes a way to unify these needs, both the drivers of our implementation of collaborative spaces, but specifically how this is going to be realized inside of our chemistry exemplar. And so, we started thinking through what does it mean to allow for both a general purpose social annotation and a specific activity annotation, the kind that we saw today, that specifically allows students to set visibility, to allow for threaded conversations in the courseware context or in the context of this individual activity, adding additional supports for tagging so that students are able to tag their own comments, find related things. This is also going to support us downstream for automation. You can imagine if students are tagging certain pieces of content as problematic or study this, we can build this out as part of an automated build a study guide, inform instructors about class hotspots, generally help improve the course design and improvement. And so the social annotation implementation of collaborative spaces is going to be one of the ways that we work to both facilitate that peer-to-peer and student-to-instructor support, but also to try to provide better opportunities for collaboration. The MVP for our course, for our chemistry course, is due this summer, and that means that we've got some designs and some mock-ups that we've been building towards. Wanted to give you a quick view of what those look like. So these are sort of core OLI pages as they exist in Torus. You can see this notion that we're going to be having this discussion and the ability to annotate showing up in the right-hand side of the screen, pretty traditional approach. What you don't see is the specific implementation for structured activities. We do not have mock-ups for that yet. This is just the mock-ups for how this shows up in a standard OLI page. Our partnership with ETX has been a sort of broader partnership across Torus and has really focused on pulling in capabilities from what had been the Smart Sparrow authoring and tutoring system into Torus. So this allows ASU to build and deliver richer, more immersive kinds of learning experiences than are traditionally thought of as a basic OLI page. Those kinds of experiences are being tied together with our foundational content under this notion of exploration activities. And so any social annotation that we deliver also needs to account for how discussions might happen in this context, whether this is an exploration of atomic mass, the periodic table, or the way that this might actually show up in a series of activities. The need to support annotation in these different kinds of contexts ends up, creating some challenges, particularly when you think about the ability of Torus to be a little more flexible in supporting change in course content. So these are some of the problems that we're working through. We're also going to be working through a series of student and instructor portals. So these are will eventually replace what we currently think of as the syllabus page inside of OLI as your main landing site. So for instructors, one of the other things we want to make sure we're able to do is surface these new discussions, whether they're showing up in that general context or whether they're showing up as a specific activity. We don't want our faculty to have to go digging for the new discussions. We really want to make them aware of where students are asking them questions and trying to get their attention. So what I just showed you was were the mock-ups. This is where we're headed as part of our MVP for chemistry, but we do have basic implementation of collaborative spaces already available inside of Torus. So as currently implemented, a collaborative space can be enabled or disabled on a page-by-page basis. Once enabled, we've got a little bit of structure that course authors can provide for what kind of threading they're going to support, visibility, approval. And if we are assigning this as a task, we're able to set some minimum requirements around replies and posts. This is obviously really focused on supporting the existing legacy discussion activity. So what's currently there does not yet provide support for the kinds of chat and social annotation activities that you just saw a demo coming out of that pilot. But the underlying collaborative space technology is what's going to be there for us to build upon and expand to start to support these use cases. Challenges and open questions for us as we think through how to best support the evolution of collaborative spaces in the context, in the specific activity space has really revolved around grouping. I think that the pilot that you just saw has had a really smooth grouping capability that's been supported by a really robust integration with Canvas using some Canvas-specific LTI or Canvas-specific APIs. Torus and OLI generally support multiple LMSs, right? We're not just supporting Canvas. We've got a lot of folks using D2L. We still have some folks using Blackboard, occasionally folks using Moodle, sometimes some even more esoteric learning management systems. And so all of that support has been happening via LTI. LTI as a form of integration does lots of great stuff, but it's not rich enough in its current form to support in LMS grouping. So LTI doesn't have a great way for us to hand off groups via the LTI pathway. And we have some concerns about how we will be able to build out courses that can get plugged into multiple LMSs if we're really looking at LMS specific implementations. And so one of the things that we really need to dig into and try to understand are, what are the range of groupings and approaches that need to be supported? How should we be prioritizing that? And we want to try to understand what gets lost if groups can't be assigned in the LMS. If there's a world in which you only are able to assign groups inside of Torus, what gets lost, and is enough lost that we want to really focus on and try to allow for some targeted LMS specific API support. So that's the big picture on where we're headed, what's available in collaborative spaces. We clearly have a way to go before we're able to provide the full support that's needed for these kinds of pilots, but we're excited. We think that we're on the way there, and we think that what's emerging is going to support both the great pilot examples that you saw, but also some of the more general purpose use cases that folks were alluding to and asking for in the question and answer session. Thoughts, questions, reactions, expressions of disgust?
Arun had a question for the Canvas LTI. Was the API used in a specific language? Martin, if you're still here, is he here? I don't see him anymore.
No, he's still here. Looks like he's still here.
Oh, there he is.
So we rely on OLI for LTI. So we didn't do that. That's whatever OLI uses.
Right, but for the groups, how did we manage it? How did we get the group connectivity? API, LTI, what did
No, we got it from OLI directly.
So like
it's
does OLI actually have like what is OLI built with? Is it a specific programming language, or is that like a group of components integrated together written in
the legacy platform is built in Java, Torus. The new platform is built in Elixir.
I see. Yeah, but just that I think Canvas LTI in itself, the API that Canvas offers is pretty bare bones, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done to wrap around that to make it work for, let's say, Java or like Python or so on. So that's why I'm more curious to like see how you manage to do that. And if like OLI is like a legacy platform, then that means it's something that existed for quite some time, right? Like even before, let's say, like Canvas became mainstream, for example, for courses.
Correct. So yeah, the legacy platform has been in production now, depending on how you count, since 2004 or 2006. So it actually predates Canvas as Canvas as a platform and structure as a company. I think that Canvas has done a nice job of publishing their own specific APIs in ways that do allow for much more robust integration than the straight LTI connection. And I think that those APIs are one of the places that that the pilot was really able to maintain a more robust integration, especially around grouping, but also in that ability to embed the chat and the annotation activities directly into Canvas. And so that's one of our questions, how do we start to think about those considerations and balance them out?
I don't know if OLI uses any Canvas API integration. I don't think it does, but whatever you saw and that we demonstrated doesn't use any Canvas API at all.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to see how it's done. If it's available open source, I would definitely go there and check it out.
So Martin, just to make sure because I think I misunderstood then. So when groups are being set in Canvas,
Mhm.
That grouping information is being passed on via the LTI connection. It's not being passed on via.
Correct. It's all LTI.
Oh, cool. I didn't understand that. That's fantastic. We'll have to take a look.
The only thing that's annoying about it is Canvas does not give you the names of the groups. It gives you IDs. So that's why we cannot show names. We give you group 1 or group 2. So you can actually solve that by passing the course name, and then we can resolve all that stuff. But we didn't do that.
Interesting. Cool. I look forward to taking a deeper look, because that's you are really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with LTI.
We definitely
That's
wanted
awesome.
to make sure that any work that we've done could be somehow leveraged and hopefully expedited in your hands. But I noticed that the learn by doings were not part of V1, that the global, which is totally fine, but I want to distinguish and make sure my understanding is correct. On the learn by doings, it's an activity type. So we have skills associated with it, and we want to tag it that way such that when that activity is done, the instructor can see in their dashboard, and plus with all the interactions, right? And then also have their data. And we want to see the outcomes of that particular skill set. And then be able to go back in and, of course, later, first of all, just in time address the student needs, but then later iterate on the course design. And it's true that we still need that, right? In Torus, we still need to be able to tag at the activity level, not at the global page level.
That is
We might need both.
that is absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay.
Like, I think that when we think about the core philosophy of OLI and the heritage of OLI, it's that we must be able to implement these as specific activities that are able to report back outcomes, that are able to be skill tagged, and that can be set up as either graded or ungraded activities, scored or unscored activities. We don't give grades. So yeah, that's still on our roadmap. That's it's not there yet, but we will need to get there. Sorry, Darren.
So Norm showed and mentioned that in Torus, right, an author can enable a collaborative space at any page. So it's actually a bit more broad than that. It can actually, the technical design supports right now today, a collaborative space to be associated and scoped to any resource in a course. And so a resource is things like a page, a unit, a module, a learning objective, and an activity. So there are no end user facing features yet that enable that, but the core design is in place that we could have collaborative spaces present and enabled for specific activities. So that part of the design is in place so that we can end up having specific activities that show a collaborative space for users to interact with within.
Sebastian, I'm curious, we're running out of time. Did you have any responses to what you're seeing or additional thoughts?
I think that that's great to expand these tools to broader course architecture. For us, it's sort of a specific purpose, because like you said, Judy, then this is important, in terms of even for again, I'm thinking specifically about the independent learners, but it's also very useful for instructor-led courses, having these activities being embedded in activity types so that we can map learning analytics to outcomes and sort of overall mastery of the course content is important. But if we can even extend this to the rest of the course, I think it opens up really interesting possibilities. So yay.
Yeah. Wow, thanks.
But talk to Martin is great. He's
Yeah.
done all kinds of work on this.
Yeah,
He's done a
definitely.
lot of research, so he has a wealth of information to pass on, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely connect about the groups. If that can help to expedite things, we'd be like very excited. Well, I just want to thank the team, everyone who put together the presentation and worked on all the different components, and of course to the OLI folks for all their hard work as well. So thank you. That's all that we had to offer, and feel free to keep that conversation going. And Aaron, please let us know if anything interesting emerges when people reach out to you.
I certainly will. Thanks, everyone. I'm glad you're thank you for your interest, and yeah, reach out to me with any additional questions or things you want to talk about. Great. Have a great Friday, everyone, and look for the recording.
Y'all.
Thank you all. Thanks, Ali, Martin, and Judy. Good team.
Sebastian.
Thanks, Norm.
Yeah, great presentation, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.